Coming to you direct from Silencer Shop Studios, home of the Glass Case of Emotion.
SilencerShop.com, the easiest way to buy silencers online, period.
Stand by for education, enlightenment, enjoyment, and entertainment.
He's not here to talk about your feelings. He's not here to say what you want to hear. He's here to say what needs to be said.
Ladies and gentlemen, and children of all ages, please welcome your host, the pimp hand of America, Professor Paul Markel.
All right. Thank you for that lovely introduction, Miss Alex. And if you've never heard Miss Alex's voice before that, you probably are new. We have several segments where Jared introduced Miss Alex, the A in the A&C Naturals. And she's all about the natural stuff, isn't she, Jared? He's going to turn his microphone on and move it in front of his face now so that we can hear him talk.
I am going to do that.
Does it work better when the microphone's near your mouth?
It works better when it's pointed at me, yes.
Ah, well, it is a black carbon steel microphone with a super cool Ninja black pop filter. Yeah. Why don't they make them some other color? Why has it got to be black, man?
I've had people ask us, or ask me, why the radio show sounds so crisp. And you guys want to know the secret? It's because
you're a ninja.
We did a non-traditional route, and we took dynamic microphones, and we used those instead of condenser mics.
Oh, so look at you.
There you go.
Look at you with your verbiage and lingo there. He's got that verbiage and lingo going. No, we try to be dynamic, don't we?
Yeah.
We're trying very hard to be dynamic. We're tactically dynamic here on Student of the Gun Radio. Well, thank you for joining us. It is Thursday. It's a Thursday edition of Student of the Gun Radio, which means it's the last one of the week, but that's okay because we'll be back next Monday. We promise. I hope we'll be back next Monday. Jared, as you've been listening to this special edition, the Art of War edition of Student of the Gun Radio, what Jared and I have been doing is we've been traveling, we've been on the road, and we've been kibitzing and doing a little mini mastermind session with our good friend E.J. Owens of Legally Concealed. And the plan is on Friday for the grad program hour to discuss our trip and our plans and plots and tribulations and all that with E.J. For our fans, for the grad program people. So you can look forward to that. If you're a grad program person listening right now, you can feel all giddy with anticipation.
They all love EJ.
So. That's right. You guys, most of the grad program people probably already know about legallyconcealed.org and about our friend EJ Owens. Yes, who knows what will have transpired. When we all get in the same room together, the synapses start firing and popping, and people are breaking out pens and opening their phones and taking notes. I break out the pens. Jared takes notes on his phone.
Was it 2015 that we sat with him at the barbecue place?
It was actually December. Oh, which one?
At the barbecue place. At the NRA show, was it 2014 or 15?
It was last year. It was 1 year ago. It was 2015.
Yeah.
When we had breakfast, you mean?
No. We had dinner. Remember we were...
Oh, yeah. That was the first night.
I forgot we did breakfast, too.
Yeah, we did breakfast, too. That's when we came up with a 2A love.
Yeah. The dinner and breakfast, with those two meals, I had 4 pages of notes in my G Drive, and I'm still going through those notes and completing stuff.
That's right. I forgot that we sat down for like 3 hours and just blew it up.
Yeah.
I
don't know what's going to come out of 2
a lot
days.
of material that actually, a lot of projects and material that transpired in the last year came from that meeting. So, grad program people, perk up your ears. Get excited because we're going to have that for you mañana on Friday. But if you are just a public listener, well, congratulations. And you say, well, I'm a public listener and I can't really pay you for the episode. I can't pay you back. You know how you can do that? You know how you can pay us back? How, Jared? You know. How can the people, if they
spreading
enjoy
the message,
that's sharing. Just share it.
Sharing is caring.
That's right. Sharing is caring.
Although I skipped kindergarten, so I did learn how to share.
You didn't skip kindergarten.
Well, I must have forgot that portion of it.
No, seriously. This week, especially if you say, well, Paul, I got friends that I think I don't know if they'd be into it, or you're mean and you scare people, and I know sometimes when weak people encounter me, they get scared, and I understand that it is natural for people to be afraid of me. You know something, Jared? And was I talking with about this last week? Said there's so much weakness in the world, and weakness in our society is actually encouraged. It's encouraged and it's excused. That's the big problem in our modern society. And I'm not talking about physical weakness. I'm talking about mental weakness. Yeah. And mental weakness today in our society, it's apologized for. It's excused. People make excuses for it. They don't encourage you to be strong. Actually, they encourage you to be weak, and then they offer you excuses. Here's a bucket of excuses. Here. Hey, it's UPS. What did you bring me today? I brought you a brand new box of excuses so you can just keep being weak and not achieve anything. Oh, thanks, UPS guy, for bringing it right so I didn't even have to leave my house. When weak people encounter those with confidence, they become frightened. And when weak people encounter those that have confidence, they don't know how to deal with it. And so they recoil and they try and make fun of or discredit the confident person because it makes them uncomfortable. I know you've encountered that in your life. I do. We encounter this all the time. Like, how do you know that you're so right there, smart guy? Well, I don't go around apologizing for every single thing I do and every single thing I say, like half of the metrosexual soy-fed manginas that populate the United States of America today.
Were you waiting for me to say? Because I was like, what? I forgot about the soy-fed mangina thing. That's going to be a patch for the grad program.
That's right. Actually, if you guys listen to Armed American Radio, you know who's the first person to ever hear that was, or for me to encounter? It was EJ. I said, dude, I'm going to start using this term for weak American men.
Oh, yeah.
And I texted him. I said, I'm going to start calling them soy-fed manginas. And he's like, do it. Well, that was the deep.
He's the one that's asking you, is pimp hand one word or?
Yeah, well, the pimp hand of America, that was another one that EJ and I kind of were. I told him, I said, dude, I feel like I have to be the pimp hand of America. This is in a text, and he said, is that one? No, it was on a phone. He goes, is that one word or two? Is that a hyphenated word or is it all together? He's like, I never write the word pimp hand.
Yeah.
It's like I don't think I've ever written the word pimp hand.
I think it would be
ever.
hyphenated because the hand is being descripted by being a pimp hand.
But then again, that not necessarily.
Yeah.
Not necessarily.
Oh.
Any of you English majors, go ahead and explain to us why pimp hand is what it is. Go ahead. We're waiting for you.
Try to keep it in one or two paragraphs.
That's right. But no, the soy-fed mangina thing, I was talking to EJ about that the day before Mark asked me to be on his show. And he was talking about gun owners that want to be reasonable and don't want don't want to offend.
For those of you that didn't hear, he was Dad. You were co-hosting this past Saturday.
No. It was the middle of the week show. It was last Wednesday. I think it was a week ago Wednesday.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I think it was a week ago Wednesday.
Feels like it was
a long time ago. No. Well, Mark's show, the Armed American Radio, is archived too, so you can go and you can look at the archives anytime.
There's
you
a
feel
link
like.
on the Student of the Gun Facebook page for people that haven't.
Was it in the grad program or was it in the public one?
That's a good question. I think it was in the public group or something.
I think it was in the grad.
It's somewhere.
Whatever.
Just look for it.
Just do it. You can go on the internet website and look for it. Somebody told me that I should look on the internet website to find the answer to that question. So I was doing that. I was trying to figure out how to work the Google on the internet machine. You know what occurred to me as I was talking to your brother this morning when he said something and I said it was mind-boggling?
What?
That movie, where these jokes, we're stealing these jokes from Blades of Glory.
Yeah.
But it came out in 2007. It's like 9 years ago.
Wow.
So when we say work the Google on the internet machine and mind-boggling, I'm sure there's a percentage of the audience that are like, what?
Yeah.
What did he say? It's kind of like in the crotchal region. All right, enough jokes, enough frivolity. Let's thank our friends. Let's thank Duracoat because life is too short to have an ugly gun. And you say, Paul, I want to Duracoat my gun, but I don't know what to do. I don't even know what colors they have. They have every color under the rainbow, including metallic colors and pastel colors. And
Don't forget about the Dura Blue.
And the Dura Blue. And you can order a special Student of the Gun tat from them. Now, if you go to brownells.com, guess what you can do while you're there and you're shopping around? Well, you can buy the Duracoat can technology. You can do it in your own garage or workshop. I don't care. You're an American. Do what you want. Frog Lube, it just works. Guns, knives, hinges, you name it. Pistol silencers, 22 silencers. Put it in there. Do it. SWAT Fuel at SWATfuelstore.com. I always want to say gear. SWATfuelstore.com. So, use the promo code SOTG2015 when you go to SWATfuelstore.com, and you'll save yourself some money. And lastly, but certainly not leastly, do not forget about our good friends at Century Arms. And what do we tell you? If you see a TP9 SA, pick it up.
Do it.
Do it.
Attention, new listeners. We produced a free training video series called 7 Training Tips That Could Save Your Life. We want you to have access to this life-saving information. Get instant access now at studentofthegun.com. Do you watch Student of the Gun TV, read the blog, and follow us on Facebook? If you answered no to any of those questions, you are wrong, but you can easily fix yourself. Go to studentofthegun.com to find everything SOTG.
All right, kids, let's move right back into part 4 of The Art of War by Sun Tzu. And one more time, this is the Stephen F. Kaufman edition, or the Stephen F. Kaufman translation. There's a lot of different translations of this book out there, and I own 3 of them. And of the 3 that I personally own, the Kaufman translation is the best. Let's go to book number 6. Now, in book 6, the title of the book, let me go flip back a couple of pages. The title of the book is Fortitude and Frailty. And he talks about the pressures of being a good leader and so forth. And in there, on the last page, at least of this book, he says, in war, there are no constants. That is why the variations of heaven must be accepted, and change is made when change is required. Change should also be considered when it is not required and kept in the event of contingencies. Now listen to this. Failure to see new ways to do things causes sloppiness in thinking and overconfidence in physical bearing. Avoid this, and that's an exclamation point. And I call that training dogma. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I have been playing this game. I have been involved in professional firearms training in one form or fashion for 30 years now. 30 years ago, I attended my very first professional firearms training class. It was 40-plus hours with John Farnham, okay? And John taught me a lot. John taught me things that I didn't even know that I didn't know. And I left there feeling supremely confident in my abilities, in my skill set, like I could do what I needed to do. And during the training, I saw things in myself. I realized that after the drill and after drill after drill, repetition after repetition after repetition, one of the biggest things was clearing a stoppage. John taught us how to clear stoppages: tap, rack, reassess. That jazz. And I think I've told you guys before, but I'll mention it again. Way back in 1986, the number one rental gun for shooting schools was a war surplus 1911, because back then there were tons of them. There were tons of World War II surplus 1911s on gun shop shelves, and you could get them at really good prices. And so if you're a shooting school and you want a battery of rental guns, what did you do? Well, you went out and you bought those. And so that's what I did. I was only 19 years old. I couldn't even legally go into a gun shop and buy one for myself in America, because that's the country we live in. But I was able to rent one for the duration of the class, and so I ran just hundreds, if not thousands of rounds through a 1911 over a period of 4 days. It had to be well over 1,000, because we were burning anywhere from 400 to 500 rounds per day. But John taught us how to practice, or he had us practice the stoppage clearing, tap, rack, reassess, and so forth. We were doing a drill, And this is what I actually was going to an executive protection, which is also bodyguarding. It was a school. And one of the many things that we did was we did vehicle ambushes, breaking ambushes, and so forth. And they also had high-speed vehicle maneuvers and driving. And we actually practiced firing from moving vehicles at ambushes. They would set up ambushes. They had tires and silhouette targets and so forth. And you would run into an ambush and you had to shoot. And I was in the process of engaging this ambush with, from the passenger side of the car, and my 1911 had a stoppage. And I immediately tapped it, racked it, and got back on target and started firing. And soon thereafter, I kind of had that deep breath moment of pause, and I was like, wow, that really worked. And I had my own epiphany. No one had to tell me, no one had to prove to me that worked. Now, despite all the things that I learned back then in 1986, for instance, the Weaver stance. John Farnham in 1986 was a hardcore Weaver stance advocate. I'm pretty sure that he picked that up from Gunsight, from the Leather Slap, Jeff Cooper, Jack Weaver, all that. Out in the West, that is how they did it in the 70s, 60s, 70s, and even 80s, even into the 90s, the Weaver stance. And you ask me today, well, Paul, you learned to shoot in the Weaver stance. I mean, that you were baptized quite literally in the Weaver stance of shooting. Do you do that today? No, I don't do that today. Well, why not? What's wrong? Did you forget how? No, I didn't forget how. I just learned a better way. How dare you say that there's a better way? Blasphemy! I know some of you are pulling out your crosses and you're holding them up to your iPhones right now to prevent the blasphemy from coming out of your earbuds. But the fact is, we don't do it that way today because we learned a better way. And people say, well, what stance should I do? And the stance that I will tell you that you should practice when you're shooting a handgun is the lean slightly forward, flex your knees, and don't fall down stance. Because your body is not the same as my body. Your feet are not the same as my feet, and your frame is not the same as my frame. If you try and mimic the way I look when I shoot, it probably won't feel right to you. What you need to do is you need to keep your body upright, flex your knees slightly. Don't lock your knees, because locking your knees will cause your legs to go to sleep, and that's not a good thing. And you also are inflexible, and you can't move quickly if your knees are locked. Lean slightly forward, because even though it's only a handgun, the recoil wants to go backwards, and your body's going to want to move backwards when you shoot. So lean forward at the shoulders. It's basically shoulders out, or shoulders forward, butt out. That's how I used to tell people on the range, real quick and simple. Shoulders forward, butt out. Your shoulders should be in front of your fanny. How's that sound? Does it mean that the Weaver stance was wrong in 1986? Does it mean that John Farnham was wrong in 1986? No, it doesn't mean that at all. If you had to go in and have open heart surgery tomorrow, would your surgeon be using the exact same tools and techniques and methods that they used to do open heart surgery in 1980, 85, 86, 87, even 90, 91? Would they use the same? No, they wouldn't. Why? Well, because we found a better way. That's the way society, that's the way communities are supposed to be. That's the way societies are supposed to work. We're not supposed to go backwards. We're not supposed to forget all the lessons that we learned. We're supposed to learn new lessons and apply them. What did Sun Tzu say in Book 6? Well, he says that nothing is constant under heaven. That is why the variations of heaven must be accepted, and change is made when change is required. Change should also be considered when it is not required, but kept in event of contingencies. Failure to see new ways to do things causes sloppiness in thinking and overconfidence in physical bearing. Avoid this. And unfortunately, in the gun culture, we see this. We see the training dogma over and over and over again. People do things not because they understand why they should do them, or because it's necessarily the best way or the most efficient way. They do things because, well, that's what it says in the 3-ring binder. And that's what we do. Well, but when's the last time we opened the 3-ring binder up and looked at it and said, hey, is this still the best way of doing this? Well, we don't. We don't question it. We look at the 3-ring binder like it's the Bible and it can't change. You know, that 3-ring binder of range rules and procedures. No, I'm not saying to change the 4 universal safety rules. No, I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is that as we move forward and develop, you know, when I first was told, when I encountered someone who told me that there was a better way than the Weaver, you know, I'd probably been out of farm school maybe 4 or 5 years or whatever, and somebody said, you shouldn't do that anymore. I was like, oh, how dare you attack my religion? Shut your mouth. You don't know what you're talking about. And I called my good friend Walt Roush. And Walt said, yeah. He goes, the reason we're changing it is because of the advent, which back then was new, of dash cams. Way back in the 90s when they started putting dash cams on police cars and recording actual shootings as they went down. And, of course, surveillance video in stores and what have you, that was very there was a lot more of it going on. And so what we could do as trainers was we could actually look and see how humans actually function under the high stress of a gunfight. And then we did something crazy. Walt Roush and the guys at IDPA started, the guys who were involved in IDPA like Ken Hackathorn and Bill Wilson, Walt Roush, Larry Vickers, what they started doing is they started looking at all the material that they were gathering that they could watch and say, well, here's an actual gunfight. Look how the bad guys reacted. Look how the good guys reacted. Look how people reacted when bullets started impacting around them. Look how they reacted when they were scared, when they were panicked, and why don't we do something crazy? Why don't we develop our training based upon how people actually function or can be expected to function in the real world? It's not that we were wrong before, but if you were to bring Jack Weaver back from the grave and say, Jack, why did you do the Weaver stance? And he would tell you, and I know I've gotten this firsthand actually from Jim Wilson. He would tell you because that's how I won shooting matches. That was the best way for me to win a shooting match. And he was a shooting son of a gun, and he could win matches. The Leather Slap Classic, way back when. And so people thought, man, this guy is an excellent shooter. I'm going to mimic him, and that will work for me when I'm a policeman or an armed citizen or whatever, you know, on the street. Well, it didn't. I'll give you a great example. Tourniquets. We talk about tourniquets today. How many of you took a class, a first aid class, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, maybe last week you took a first aid class, and in that class it said, tourniquets should only be used as a last resort after all other means have failed. Well, what do we know today from practical reality? Not just something that was written in a book, not just something that seemed like a good idea. It was notional. No, based upon our experiences in the current global war on terror, we know that if someone has a major hemorrhage in their arm or leg, and you do all other means first, if you fiddle fart around with direct pressure, elevate the leg, look for a pressure point underneath the knee, you know, all this nonsense. If you do all that and you fart around for 2 or 3 minutes and then you still realize that you can't stop the flow of blood, okay, I'll go and I'll make an improvised tourniquet. Now you start looking for stuff to make a tourniquet out of. Well, hand me that rag, hand me that stick, give me a screwdriver. By the time you actually do it and maybe get some pressure on that limb, they've been bleeding uncontrollably for 5 minutes or more. How long were they bleeding before you walked up to them? Well, I don't know. The old American Red Cross and every other first aid campaign that told you tourniquet is a last resort after all other means have failed and blah, 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 blah. That's a death sentence to anybody who has an arterial bleed. And we learn that, so we don't do it anymore. But we still encounter that because people have this thing called training dogma. They refuse to modify it. Now, 30 years ago, nobody knew any better. Or the people that did know any better weren't being listened to, so we just, tourniquet is used after last resort, blah, 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 blah. We don't do that now. Does it mean we were stupid in 1987? No, it meant we were ignorant in 1987. That's what it meant. So beware. Sun Tzu, hundreds of years ago, knew of the problems and of training dogma when you stop thinking and just do. Well, and am I saying to question everything? No, not necessarily. But what I'm saying is you need to have enough experience that when you ask a question, this brings me up to an excellent point, you need to have enough experience that when you ask a question, you're asking it for a valid reason, not just to be a smartass. A good student knows when to ask questions and when to shut their mouths and learn. Think about that for a second. A good student isn't just somebody that sits quietly. I mean, I always want students to ask questions, but it's up to the student to understand, is this the time for me to ask a question, or is this the time for me to shut my mouth and listen? And there's times for both. So I'm not telling you to just come in being a smartass and question everything you're taught, but when you encounter somebody and you might say, well, why is it that we do that? Why do we perform that way? Why do we practice that way? And if their only answer is, because we said so, shut up, it's not really a good answer, is it? I mean, it's not a good answer for me. Now, and we don't. Now, one other thing, we don't want to change horses in midstream. And something that has been put forward to me, when we're doing a class, when we're training, we have the training package. We know what we're going to do. Now, after the class is over, if you have good instructors, they can sit down. This is something that we had to do quite often when we first stood up the Expeditionary Combat Skills School, because they gave us a 3-ring binder. They said, here you go. Go forward and do this. And for the people that were in Virginia sitting in an office, putting it all together, that made perfect sense to them. They had no problem with it. They're like, I don't know what these guys are going to have a problem with. This is perfect. But then when you get to the field, this is where, what does Sun Tzu say? He said, you need to have change for when it becomes necessary. So they gave us a 3-ring binder. We all read it. We understood it. We're like, okay, go forth and conquer. We get out. We have actual humans, 60, 75. We were doing 100 students per class. And what they gave us in the book wasn't working for the 100 students. Like, yeah, this was great in the classroom. This was great when you were sitting down. But here out in the real world, this doesn't work. And if we just refuse to change it, if we refuse to look at it and say, how can we improve this? What can we do different? And you're like, I don't care. It's in the manual, and you're going to do it like that. You're like, but we can't get the result we need if we do it like that. I don't care. It's in the manual.
Just
Jared,
lower the expectations.
Yeah, exactly. How many times have you encountered that in your life? I know that there's a certain someone that you don't like to talk about, but that someone was, I don't care. It says it right there. Just do it. And you're like, no, if I do that,
then it's going to be wrong.
It's going to be screwed up.
Yeah.
So, like if I wish hard enough, it'll be right.
Yeah. And then you do what's right, and then because your boss is the one that says, hey, do it this way because it's in the binder, and then you do it the right way, but it's wrong to him, then you're the bad person.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen and children of all ages, what am I talking? When I say training dogma, I'm saying that because I don't want you to be a smartass and question everything. Remember, you need to be a good student, and you need to have enough experience, because many new students will say, "Oh, that doesn't make any sense to me. I don't think we should do that." And you're like, "Well, it doesn't make sense to you because this is your first experience. This is your first time encountering this information. That's why it doesn't make sense to you." But how will you know if there's a way to improve? How will you know if there's a better way? You can only know that through experience and education. And once you've done that, you're like, okay, we've done this 8 times. You know what? I bet you there's a better way, a more efficient way to do this. But beware of training dogma. It's out there. We encounter it all the time. We encounter it constantly. And it's, we obviously hammer hard on firearms training here on Student of the Gun, but it's everywhere. And I'm sure it was in your job, your previous job to hear.
Yeah,
I've encountered it
everywhere.
As a security provider, when I became the security manager for the hospital, they're like, well, it says right here that you're supposed to do this in the book. I'm like, okay, but that's not really going to work. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to jump into our Student of the Gun homeroom right now. I hope that you have enjoyed our special edition of the Art of War Student of the Gun University tutorial. And I hope that you appreciated monitoring that class. All right, let's go ahead and do our homeroom.
What you gonna do when it all comes back to the place that you never wanted it to come back to? And where you gonna roll when the bottom drops out and you got no place to go? Who you gonna trust when trust is a must? You better roll with the rest of us. So pack your bags and all the faith you can, cause it's about ready to hit the fan. Come to ready. It's 2012, y'all about the re-election of an antichrist. Come to ready. You don't believe me, just so deep into the soul of the liar's eyes.
All right, SOTG Homeroom is brought to you by Crossbreed Holsters. You want to carry a gun? Need to attach a gun to something? Your body, a vehicle, a table, I don't care, a chair, the space shuttle? Go to crossbreedholsters.com and they can help you do that. All right, let's talk about night sights. Sights on a handgun, specifically. Which ones are better? Okay. Now, we've talked about Ameriglow on this show. We talked about XS sights on this show. And somebody said, well, you said Ameriglow sights, and now you're saying XS sights are good too. I mean, they both can't be good. Well, yeah, they can. Ameriglow sights, if you look at them, no, like two of the specific custom sights configurations that we've talked about have been put together and assembled or from the minds of our friends Ken Hackathorn and Dave Spalding. And what they essentially are is they're very close to your traditional notch and post type sights. However, they have radioactive luminous material in them. They have tritium, and then they have paint. I can't remember. One of them is kind of a red-orange, and the other one is kind of a safety green. And I'm sorry, I can't remember which version is which. I think, of course, if I say this, I'm going to be wrong. If I say Spalding's or safety green, it's going to be the opposite. But the fact is, the Ameriglow sights, they favor their traditional much more than XS sights do. And it's funny that we were just talking about training dogma, because a lot of the reason that people can't wrap their minds around XS sights is because they're different. Because those don't look like the ones I learned on 10 years ago. Those sights don't look like the sights on my dad's pistol when he taught me how to shoot when I was 13 years old. So they must be bad. They must be wrong because they're different. And it's difficult for people to really embrace different things, new things. We've explained ad nauseum why XS sights are designed and configured like they are. The dot, the reason the dot is a dot, the reason that it's a convex dot is because it actually gives you more surface area than if it was flat. And you're like, well, big deal, I don't care. Well, it is a big deal because if you have a greater amount of surface area that is white, what are you doing? You're reflecting more visible light. It's science. And why white? Why not green? Why not orange? Why not red? But I like orange sights. I like the safety green sights. They look good in my vision. I really like them. They make me happy. I sleep well at night knowing that I have orange sights on my gun. Okay, great. I don't care. Go nuts. But the scientific fact is, as you lose available natural light or artificial light or whatever, when it gets dark, everything goes from color to shades of gray. Actual genuine black is black. Actual genuine white is white. And everything between the two spectrums is a varied shade of gray. Okay? So a white sight even in complete darkness, even in poor light, even in an alley, even in a basement, even in a hallway, whatever, a white sight is always going to be white. A colored sight, whether it's orange or red or yellow or green or whatever, in the dark, it's going to be a shade of gray. It just is. That's the physical reality of it. Now, when you put radioactive material in the front sight, that is a completely different ball of wax because the radioactive material actually provides its own light, right? And you're like, well, what you say there is wrong, Paul, because the tritium is yellow-green. And so, yeah, well, the reason it's yellow-green is because it's generating its own light. It has its own energy source. But when there's no energy, when it's just dark, white is white, black is black, and every color becomes gray. If you can't wrap your mind around using a dot as a sighting system, fine. Don't have an aneurysm. Don't break a blood vessel in your head. Just get a more traditional one like they have from Ameriglow. It's that simple. You're like, well, I hear you, Paul. I hear what you're saying, and I understand it, but I can't shoot good with the dot sight. Never have been, never will be. Okay, great. Then get the squared sights from Ameriglow and drive on with your life. The most important thing for a front sight is that when things are bad, nasty, and ugly, that you can find it and put that sight on the bad object, press the trigger, rinse, lather, repeat. That's the most important thing. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for an entire week of Student of the Gun Radio. Thank you for joining our special edition, The Art of War. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed it, please share it with somebody who didn't already hear it. They might actually get something from it. If you're a Student of the Gun Grad Program member, well, you know what tomorrow is. Tomorrow's Special Happy Fun Time.
We might even have a cameo from Mr. Owens.
Oh, you think you're going to be able to do that?
Maybe.
Well,
I'm going to try it.
Look at him. He's plotting and scheming over there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, remember, you're a beginner once, but you should indeed be a student for life.